You're listening to ViewSource, a conversation around tech, web development, and WordPress with hosts Aurooba Ahmed, that's me, and Brian Kortz.
Aurooba, are you experiencing deja vu right now?
Yes. It also helps that you have the same outfit on.
You know, a lot of people in tech, I think they think of like Steve Jobs and he wears the same outfit every day. But I think of like 90s Nickelodeon cartoons and like how they would wear this. Like Bart Simpson wore the same clothes every day. And I remember an episode of, I think it was Doug on Nickelodeon, and he opened his closet and it was just the same outfit like over and over. And I remember thinking as a kid, like, that's a genius idea because you never have to think about clothes again. And then I was sent to a school that made you wear uniforms, and that was it. So black hoodie every day. I never have to think about what I'm going to wear.
I mean, I have a uniform too. It's just not restricted to color. I wear a tunic and I wear like a pair of jeans or a pair of tights, and that's what I wear, you know? I also don't really think about what I wear. I just pick whatever is clean and hung up in my closet because they're all the same type of outfit for the most part. But yeah, I think that there's times when I wonder, maybe I should try like a full-on proper uniform that's like all the same color and everything. But I'm too lazy to now go out and buy multiples of the same thing just to try it out.
To be fair, this black hoodie is a little snug, and my wife will not let me wear it out in public because it's a little tight on me, and I think it shrunk. I don't think it has anything to do with me. I 100%. It's definitely the hoodie. But I've been bugging her to just order me like 2 more. I'm like, just keep buying more, because I actually have like 3 black hoodies, but my favorite one is getting too snug.
That's fair. That's fair. But yes, it is total deja vu for sure.
Yeah, that is not even why I asked about deja vu. I asked about deja vu because we have already recorded this episode, and here we are recording it again, and it is 100% my fault.
Well, I think I can take part of that blame. I didn't notice either.
Yeah, when we recorded it, I was using the microphone in my AirPods instead of the nice podcast microphone. And the minute I went to edit it, it was like, oh, geez.
What am I hearing? I don't know how I didn't notice it. It was weird.
I am surprised that you didn't notice it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
it is
I think it was a good thing. Yeah, because when we first recorded this episode, and we're going to talk all about collaborating on GitHub, collaborating in the open, making a pull request in somebody else's project. We recorded this before I had finished the pull request, and you reviewed it for me, and we did that in real time on the call, and we talked about some of the feedback. But now we finished it, we've merged it, we deployed it, we posted about it, we got a ton of traffic on it. It was super cool. So it'll be a different perspective.
Totally. And maybe a more complete perspective, because now you can go and see not only is it like how was it reviewed, but then after the review, because GitHub is like so good at showing the activity, we can see what happened afterwards and how that turned into the final like piece of the project that we can also show now.
Yeah. So why don't I share the website that you started, and then we'll talk about what the idea was.
Yeah, let's do it.
This is wphelpers.dev. Can you explain, because this is your project really, can you explain what it is and how it started?
So wphelpers.dev actually used to be called latestwp.is, which came out of a conversation in the post status Slack last year, where a lot of people were sharing these one-pager websites that tell you the version of something or tell you what the day of the week is. And someone was like, wouldn't it be cool if you could go to a site and it would tell you what the latest WordPress version is? Because, I mean, it's not that hard to find, but there is not one single URL that you could just go to. And so I decided to experiment a little bit with Netlify and next.js at the time and create a serverless function that accesses the WordPress.org API, pulls out what that single, version number is, and pops it on this big page. Then later, I ended up adding one more little piece of functionality to it and decided to rename the whole thing WP Helpers, because I had this vision that it could be a collection or library of tools and interesting, helpful things for other WordPress developers or builders. but then I didn't have time to actually do anything about it. And then you had an idea based out of your own little frustration that I've also experienced, right?
Yeah. So I've been doing a lot of custom block development and a lot of Gutenberg stuff. And when you're in Gutenberg, you don't really use the dash icons quite as much. You use the new icon library. It's really great. It's a package. It's in Gutenberg. You can use it anywhere you want. But they just don't have that classic, like every icon library has like a good landing page where you can see all the icons, you can search, you can filter, you can click on them, you can click to copy them. Like it's just the normal like landing page for an icon library that like sells it. And it's kind of that classic Gutenberg thing of like, we built a really cool thing and we're just going to try really hard to make sure no one ever finds it. And, you know, I just thought, man, it would not be that hard to just make this page. And that's when you said, do it on WP Helpers.
Yeah, because it already was there and that was the idea for it. And I figured it's already a project that's set up, right? Which I think was really helpful for you.
Yeah, because sometimes I get those like single page ideas like, oh, it'd be cool to do this. And then I'm like, I'm not gonna sit here and do this. But it worked out really well because all the Gutenberg packages, like they're all kind of basically like React, like, you know, it's WordPress element, but it's essentially, they're just kind of, you could use with React anywhere. And your site was built on React and Next.js. So like once you said that, and it was like, I could build a single page, I could load the package the normal way it's meant to be loaded and like loop through it. Like it was actually, it was honestly like easier than if I had like sat down and thought, how would I do this now? Like it all just, the pieces fit together like so perfectly. It was really cool.
And I don't think you spent a long time on it. Like you got the initial version of it whipped up in I think less than 2-3 hours.
Oh, easily. Yeah. It was very quick to make. The hardest part was really thinking through the UI, which was, I think, where most of the feedback in the action is. We should just show it, and then
let's look at it.
Kind of see.
Totally.
Yeah. So I like that you added this. You have now you don't just have this. You have like these extra things. So let's click through.
Let's go to the icon library.
This is essentially the icon library. I mean, there's so many good icons on here. And
and there's more coming. They're constantly adding more icons to the WordPress icon library. So it'll be really nice to see it update and be able to see all of those as well.
Yeah, because I saw somebody had a pull request for, I think it was like the details block that they're maybe potentially going to do. So then in their pull request, they had a new icon for the block. Like it's kind of cool. You get to see them add to it. What should we search for?
Let's search for the custom post type icon.
So I'll just type in post and we'll get everything related to a post.
Yes. Yeah.
The one downside is the icon library doesn't have any real metadata. So you really are only searching by the name versus on the dash icons font, the old way they used to do icons. When you search that page, there's a little more metadata. So like you could search for like media and you would get images and, you know, you'd get all different things. What's cool about this is you rebuild the whole project whenever there's a new release. It just rebuilds it. So then if they release a new version, like it's just going to pull all that in automatically and just
that's true.
Compile it.
So these are all the icons for posts. And a lot of these, I mean, they're all in use, I think, right now. And you can just see all of them. But what's really awesome is like the area at the top that you have, which lets you copy all the relevant pieces of code or the name or the import or the icon component with the name already filled in.
And I was actually, as we're talking, I was thinking maybe right here we should have like the npm install, you know, because that's the one other
that would
thing
be nice.
A little click to copy what you need to do to install it.
I mean, depending on how you set up your WordPress project, it might not need to be installed.
I mean, that's actually what's really cool is like we're using this on a not WordPress, like a React app, like website. But if you are in WordPress and you're using like WP scripts and stuff and you imported an icon, you know, if you use the import here to import an icon and this was here, WP scripts would like basically say like, yep, we know what that is. We'll make sure it's in queued beforehand. Like it's, you know, it would handle all of that for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's really awesome about this, which is like one of my favorite parts, is you can copy the SVG and paste it in any vector program like Figma or XD or Sketch, and it will just create the icon, because all of those are SVG / vector based programs. So this actually works not just for developers, but it also works for anyone who wants to use these icons in their mockups and designs.
Yeah, which is awesome, because I'm a huge fan of, I think we even talked about this in our last episode about the tag processor where we were modifying SVGs. Like I'm always just going to throw that SVG in the page. Like if I'm building in JavaScript, I can definitely use these components and stuff. But if I'm in there, I'm like writing in PHP, I can just come in here and just steal this SVG and just stick it in there.
Exactly.
And then it just matches WordPress. Oh, so good.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yes. So this is the final result of what ended up getting merged and released into the project and then into the wild.
Mm-hmm.
But let's now go through the actual pull request of when you wanted to put it in the project.
Okay. So here is the main page of the repo that I cloned. Mm-hmm. Because you added me as a collaborator, I actually didn't have to like fork the whole repo and then submit my pull request that way. It's actually not a huge difference in most cases. But in this case,
pretty similar.
It made it a little easier because you have some kind of cool things set up here that we'll talk about, like Netlify, which I thought was really great. Mm-hmm. So, and I think since we've done this is now open source, or was it already open source?
It was always open source. Yep.
Oh, okay. So let's go to my pull request. The first thing that I did was create a pull request very early in the process. I created a branch. I threw up the idea of like bare bones what it would look like. And I added this very first comment here with, let's be honest, like not the most like verbose good comment, but like we had been chatting about it. So you kind of already knew it was coming. But I threw it at you like early, like initial commit, like before anything, and threw it at you.
And at the time, you titled it WIP, Searchable Gutenberg Icon Library, because you noted that it was a work in progress. In GitHub, if you have a paid organization or if it's an open source personal repository, you actually also have the ability to create work in progress draft pull requests, which is a really nice way to let other people know when you're contributing to their project or to anything that, hey, this thing is coming, but it's not ready. But even if you don't do it that way, like you can set up just like a label, right? So WIP, and then the other person knows it's not ready, but here you go. You can monitor the progress, give feedback. It's really nice.
Yeah. And like the minute you do that, Netlify jumps in because you're hosting this with Netlify. It's auto deploying and everything. They actually like they take my branch, they make a preview URL of it that you can click on and you can visit, and we can immediately be looking at the same thing. You don't even have to pull it. You don't have to do anything. And we can just both have like something in front of us to talk about, to start collaborating on, and like have that discussion way earlier in the process, so that I didn't go so far down a weird path that I did something weird. For example, I think you very early on were like, you should model this after the dash icons, like landing, like the old classic dash icons where the icon's on one side and you click to copy up here and everything's in a grid. And like, getting that feedback early made like really like, I think probably saved a lot of me banging my head against the wall, because I'm not like a UI design person.
Yeah. And that way you're not wasting your time or doubling your work by creating it in one way and then having to redo it because this other person wants it done or has feedback or ideas on it as well. And what I really liked was when I was reviewing it and giving you feedback was if you click on that deploy preview, it has this collaboration drawer. And if you're logged in, you're able to see the pull requests in the little drawer, like click on and add screenshots from the page on there. Yeah. And then, comment on things from there. So it gives you like a really nice way to be on the project, like be on the deploy preview and also be adding feedback inside the pull request. So that's something I also really appreciate about how Netlify works. It's really cool.
Yeah. Some of these things, as we've been spending time in Next.js particularly, and Netlify and everything, where especially like there's no database, there's no plugins, there's really no
Yeah.
WordPress. It's like, it's pretty nice.
Yeah, there's some pretty cool things about it for sure.
One final thing I will say is if I didn't know you and wasn't already talking to you about this, I would much more have filled this out, put some screenshots, put some like objectives of what it's trying to accomplish. If you're making a pull request on something that's like more public and maybe more formal, like you really do have to make a good case and kind of explain what you're trying to accomplish to get the best feedback for sure.
Definitely. Yeah. In this case, because we already were talking on Slack, and I think part of this conversation even happened on a Zoom right after recording a podcast episode, I think it was okay. But yeah, if you're contributing to a project or if you're working with a team and it's a client project and you're just working internally, even, you want to add a really good initial comment so that not only are your teammates who are currently in the middle of this project with you able to understand what's going on, but your future self and other people in the future can come back to it and understand what was the initial goal of this, what were we trying to accomplish. Being a little more over communicative in your activity on GitHub, in a pull request or an issue, all of that, there's never a bad outcome from that. It only just adds like value in the present and later as well.
And then I requested a review from you, probably a little too early, like for an actual review. But I mean, that depends on your process. Like, do you want reviews early?
Yeah.
Do you want to review it at the very end? I don't know that I would really like requesting a review. To me feels like look at the code and make sure it's all good. And it probably wasn't at that point yet. It was more just like look at the idea and just get a sense of it. But
I mean, I think it depends, right? Because you and I both are very iterative in our process of creating things. And so you and I are constantly saying to each other, hey, can you take a look at this? Hey, can you review this? And then adding more to it. And both of us understanding that this doesn't mean it's a final thing. This doesn't mean that it's perfectly done. It's in the process of it. So as long as you're clear with the people you're working with, what a review is for, it's, you can make it work for yourself, for you and your team.
And the nice thing is, so like if we go down, there's things like general comments, conversations that we had. So you had some ideas about different features to add. I had some ideas and some links of like things I was trying to reference. And, you even like include like notes from a call of like, okay, now that we've talked about it, what do we think? And so all of that stuff is just a general thread of a conversation. But then as we get into like reviews, you start seeing like, okay, here's actual requests, here's actual comments and stuff like that.
Yeah. And those are really, really nice because you can get really fine grained, very specific with those.
Yeah. Like, for example, you were literally commenting on here. I used CSS Grid and I made it 5 columns in this original version. And you wanted 4 columns. I wanted 5 columns with a smaller
And then we had a
font
conversation about it. Yeah.
And then I looked at some of the icon names that are like 50 character long and it was like, okay, yeah, I'm not going to win this one. But it was great because we could talk about it right in the line of code, and it's like right here. And now GitHub even tells us this is outdated because you ended up winning. So I can actually resolve this, right?
It's not a competition. Yes, you can resolve it.
You didn't win, but you were right.
I convinced you.
It was not, well, it just wasn't going to happen with 5 columns. Some of those icon names were like coming out of the side of the box.
Yes. I think that that's really important. Sometimes when you have those very specific code related conversations, someone creates it and they were thinking something and then someone comes into it with a piece of feedback. And it's really, I think the important perspective to keep here is everyone is trying to achieve the best possible outcome. So it's more about understanding everyone's side of it so that you can come to a conclusion that we all think is the right move, right? So in this case, I was able to convince you and make a good case for it, and you ended up agreeing with me, but it could have easily gone the other way where you had a completely different solution that I hadn't thought of that would have meant that we could have kept the 5 columns perhaps and have it still be really readable and Like it could have gone in so many different ways depending on what that code situation is. So as long as in a review process, both the reviewer and the reviewee are always remembering that we are all on the same side, we're all trying to achieve the same goal, then everything's going to be okay. You know, it's not a punitive thing. It's not a scary thing. It's a collaborative thing.
And then sometimes just you win and I lose, and that's just the way it is. I'm just No, it's true. And another good example kind of along those lines is this one here. It's not showing the code because the code, I think we ended up deleting and moving stuff around so
No, I
much
think
that
it's
this
because
file
I
changed.
commented on the whole page.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So you had an idea, you commented it
Mhm.
here, and then I used the little drop down where you basically make a new issue, and that issue will always have a link back here to remind you of where the
For
issue came
context.
from. Yeah, it was
Mhm.
like you were like, we need actually a real header for the site now that it has multiple pages, but we'll do that in a new issue. So I made a new issue. I made a little link here and I resolved it. And it's like just
Yes.
the like history of everything. It's like like
Yeah.
these little moments come in handy later on when you least expect it, when you can find the logic train.
Totally. And you know, in a project where you and I are not the only ones who are contributing, for example, and let's say that we weren't talking on Slack, even better would have been we created an issue first where we talked about what we're trying to achieve and then we linked that to a pull request, because having that thread of history to follow back later for other people, especially in something that might be open source, is so key, and it's so vital for other people to understand how you work and what you expect and what you want or would want, you know, when they're trying to contribute too. So in this case, it's literally perfect. So now you've created this issue, and you know, we have other issues in there too, as we've been like documenting ideas for what we want to add here. And then you can come back to it. Or if someone else were to come in and say, oh, I can help with that, now they know the context of where this came from and can probably like have a pretty like guess pretty well what that component might look like, even without having to talk to us.
Yeah, and one thing I get tripped up on, because normally in most projects we would have opened an issue with the idea
Yeah.
and then
Mm-hmm.
maybe assigned it and said, okay, I'll assign this to myself because I want to make the pull request for it first. And so that is,
Yes.
one thing that's kind of unusual about this. But then I do get tripped up sometimes where you have an issue for a topic and you have a pull request for that same thing. And
Mm-hmm.
the conversation sort of starts to split because on
Split.
the issue,
Mm-hmm.
you're talking about the problem and maybe some potential solutions. But on the pull request, you're really talking about this particular approach and solution and this code. Like the issue becomes this sort of general idea and the pull request gets
Yeah.
really specific, but sometimes you kind of forget, oh, where did we talk about that? Was that on the issue? Was that on here? Wasn't there a link to that? So that is
Yeah.
one tricky thing that you do have to keep in mind, that if you're looking at a pull request, if it says at the top closes issue number whatever, or if it says in the
Mm-hmm.
sidebar over here, usually there'll be like related issues under this
In
development
the
tab.
development. Mm-hmm.
You got to go there too, and sometimes more of the conversation unfolds in the issue.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Sometimes you have to jump around in multiple places in order to get context. And let's say you're looking at a much larger project, for example, the Gutenberg repo for WordPress. You might sometimes, in order to follow the thread of a conversation, I have to go through like 8 or 9 links, because you might have a pull request that was linked to an issue, which might be part of a larger tracking issue, which might be part of a larger tracking issue that was actually stemming from a different, smaller issue. And there might be multiple comments to go through. So it can be overwhelming. But even when it is overwhelming, it's really, really nice that you have these amazing interlinks available in the history and the way GitHub tracks everything. So at least you can generally follow the thread, even if it might seem like a longer thread than necessary.
Yeah, I mean, over communicating is always better than not having enough information. But like the other day, you sent me a thing of like, look in Gutenberg, they're doing this thing about patterns. And then it was like 10
Yeah.
issue links. I was like, am I going to read all these? It's going to take me a day just to parse through. And
I know.
I'm, I needed to send that to like ChatGPT. Read all of these issues, summarize what are they trying to accomplish here. But it's true, like that there's so much on a thing like Gutenberg, like it's big, it's complicated. There's one issue, I think that one was about patterns, right? But that affects everybody. That
Yeah.
affects people who use different types of themes. It affects people who are editing.
Mhm.
It affects whether you're in the site editor, like, so it becomes a part of all these different threads that they have to tie together. And it is nice that at least the links are there. You can follow it. I mean, it's better than if it was just in Slack, or in email,
Yes.
right?
Definitely. So I requested all these changes, and then we resolved all of them in one way or another. And then you
Mm-hmm.
added more updates to basically resolve those, right? And create that extra issue.
Yeah. So this was that pull request that when I made a new issue,
Yeah.
there's another kind of link to it, another kind of cool connection. I
Mhm.
did a couple commits. You can see here. I didn't really ask for feedback, but I got it right here. I knew
Yes,
it.
because
I knew it
well,
wasn't
I was
responsive.
looking, I was creeping on it because it was exciting.
Yeah, I knew. It wasn't. So you can see kind of all the little like pieces. You can track
Mhm.
bringing back documents, all these sorts of things, and then another review, which you get with this kind of green check mark that lets you know like this was approved, it was reviewed. And so, was there any? This just shows you. Oh, this is kind of cool.
Yeah, you can go into the code view, the file changes view, which I think you and I live in a lot when we're reviewing
Oh
pull
yeah.
requests anyway. Because on the side where you can see in this new code view that GitHub introduced this year,
Mm.
you can see easily with the icons when something is a new file or if something has been a modified file. So it's a green plus icon when it's a brand new file. And if something was modified, it's sort of like a orangey brown dot, right? And I find that really handy because I want to know, oh, okay, what are the new things that were added? But then, okay, where did you change something that was in my existing code base that I might need to take a closer look at because it affects existing stuff, right?
And there's also a red one. It'll show you if a file was deleted,
Deleted. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
which is handy. I mean, I'm somebody who loves a bunch of tiny little files, but like this whole page
Yes.
is really not a lot of files, a couple changes, a couple of
Yeah.
components.
Mhm.
Like the whole thing is actually pretty clear. And then, there's all those
Yes.
spots where you added comments.
Yeah.
But yeah, like those sorts of like little conversations, having them here, and being
Mhm.
able to see all of the conversations we had, um, being able to like come through, like when you review, you get this little drop down, you get to put in like general comments, you get to
Yeah.
click on a line and start a new comment. Like all this stuff
Mhm.
just makes collaboration so much easier.
And the one thing to really remember about review is even if you're adding those separate comments and everything, until you submit your review, the other person will not see it. So you can actually leave it open for a while and come back to it. And that's something that's not as easy if you were doing it without the review process, because then they'll see those comments coming in on a rolling basis. And that can sometimes be frustrating when you're getting reviewed because you may not have the whole context for how something was getting reviewed. So when it's a proper GitHub review, everything goes out together in one little section with an overall general comment, which is a really important place for you to not only, what is it called? A compliment sandwich. So always, yes, you are asking for changes, you're asking for updates, but also let's acknowledge the awesome work and the hard work that another person did, whether that's your teammate on a client project or that's someone who's contributing to your project. That's really important to always do. So I like to use that general comment for that.
Because I learned that one the hard way where I asked a developer, like, how come you haven't addressed these comments? And I said it like that. I said, what's your problem? Address these comments. I was really rude about it. I'm just kidding. But I was said like, oh, did you get my comments? And they didn't. And I didn't understand that you have to actually like submit it. And I thought that was
Hmm.
I didn't really get it, but that actually makes a lot of sense. Like if you're getting that one comment at a time, it's like when you're at a restaurant and like you're like, can I get a soda? And then they come back and then you're like, oh, can I get some more ranch? And then they come back and then you're like, oh, and I
Yeah.
forgot I dropped my fork. And you're like running the waitress like
Yeah.
back and forth. It's so annoying. And so like the fact
Hmm.
that it submits the whole batch, super handy.
Definitely. Yeah. So it's well thought out, and it definitely makes collaboration a little smoother and a little less with crossed wires, I think, when you use these features that are available to you in GitHub. And if you're using Netlify, having that collaboration drawer with the deployment previews, now no one can say, oh, it's not working on my environment. No, we're all looking at the same deploy preview.
Yeah. I don't have to worry about your like weird issue that you messed up your command line last week when you updated Xcode and now like you're on
Yeah.
PHP 5 on your local. Yeah. All of that goes away because we're all just looking at the same thing.
Yes, definitely.
So let's see what happened next. Approve. I got a compliment sandwich right here, right? Like a little nice thing. And then when I click the merge, that makes a nice little merge commit and you change the title and we're done. And that's everything.
Yep. Yeah. And then it was live. And because it's Netlify, it automatically deploys anything to production that gets pushed into main. And within, I think, a couple minutes, it was live for the whole world to see. And then you did this amazing tweet thread on it, which got so much attention. It was so fantastic. And then we ended up having to be like, oh, okay, maybe there's a couple extra things we should do, like that we didn't do before, like add a social media preview so it doesn't look terrible on Twitter and that kind of thing.
Yeah, there's a few things where you go, oh yeah, WordPress would have like handled that for me if this was a WordPress site that I wouldn't have to think about.
Yeah.
But also the fact that I just clicked merge and then it was live. It's like,
that was amazing.
So much better. This honestly on a personal level, like this one turned me on like Next and that stuff. Cause for specific situations like this, where you're like, I just want to make one cool interactive-y thing with like minimal effort. It really like, it couldn't have been easier. I don't think it could not have been an easier process.
Totally. And, I think this is that really important note of use the right tool for the right situation and project and use case. In this situation, WordPress actually didn't make sense. But in another situation where there's a lot of content heavy stuff happening or whatever, WordPress would make sense. So we love WordPress, but I think, you and I also both really enjoy Next.js, and I've been working with it a lot as well recently. And there's just some really cool things in it. Like dynamic routing in Next.js is amazing, but we should do an episode on Next.js, I think.
Ooh, that's a good idea. Like a walkthrough, just like, it's like one of those things where I was like, that just sounds too confusing. I don't even know what it's for. And then I think you hear about it a lot in the context of like headless WordPress, where, if this was like headless WordPress, that's a whole separate thing. But when it's just its own little like starter template, because Netlify and Next, like they have this little starter template that like has all the stuff, it has the routes, it has everything ready, and you're just like making little pages that are just a handful of lines of code. We should do that at Next.js. Like
so smooth.
We
will. This was a really awesome pull request, and I'm so excited that you made it. It's so cool, and it's so fun to see people, going to it, and we can tell when someone copies an element, like an icon or something. So there's definitely people clicking and copying and using it already. So that's really cool to see. And
using your GDPR compliant Fathom analytics, right? And there's no Google Analytics. And I think what was one last thing that came out that was really cool was in the middle of this, one of the icons wasn't loading and it just looks broken. And you found the bug in Gutenberg, submitted a pull request in Gutenberg to fix their broken icon. And then a contributor actually pointed out that, oh, good, I checked it on Storybook, which is their visual reference for Nick. Yeah, for all the icon, like kind of like, oh yeah, I checked that on the visual reference for all the icons that already exists in WordPress. We just built this whole thing and didn't know it already existed.
We should have, but it is so hidden. Do you want to pull that up? It's so hidden and it's so like hard to find, and you don't think that the Storybook will have it, that we didn't realize it was there.
This is the icon package that we based it on, right? So, this is what we're essentially doing, but nowhere in here is there any link to anything that tells you that you can actually look at all the icons. Like nowhere here do you get an idea of what they look like visually. How did you How did you get to it?
The visual reference?
Yeah.
Well,
Just from his comment?
Well, yeah, I got to it from his comment, but I do go to the storybook quite a lot, but it is true. It is nearly impossible to find the storybook unless you know it already exists or if an existing contributor links you to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is what the storybook looks like. And I mean, the storybook concept is really great.
Mm-hmm.
And it has all the components in some shape or form. If you scroll right to the very, very bottom of the whole components.
Past the experimental components.
Yes.
There it is down here.
And then you see the icon component and also all of the icons, which you can. They are searchable.
Oh, okay. So if I put in post, I get the same exact ones because that's all they're basing on.
Yeah.
But they don't have that cool click to copy.
Yeah, it does exist, but it is very hard to find. But now I think we have an easier one. And it's it's such an easy URL to remember too, right? So like wphelpers.dev/icons.
Mm-hmm.
Done. But yeah, so that is the process of creating a pull request and merging it into a project that another person might be maintaining that you want to collaborate with. And then the final result, it goes live and it's a pretty good feeling.
Yeah. Well, thank you for letting me collaborate. I think now it's going to be an even better resource. And if you have an idea, then reach out to us with your idea or open an issue of what you think wphelpers.dev needs for its next cool helper.
Idea. Totally. All right. Well, I guess I'll talk to you the next time we record.
All right. See you then. Visit viewsource.fm for the latest updates and links to the show notes. Review and subscribe to ViewSource in iTunes, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts.